a warm Christmas night, James's small farm became the starting point for a new journey for Diep, the girl who had once endured a life of enslavement at the hands of Pau. With James, the wealthy CEO of Diep, she not only found love, but also discovered the hidden potential within herself. Today, James began teaching Diep how to read, opening a door to a world of knowledge she had never dared to dream of. Yet, Diep's past still weighed on her, and James's father secretly set challenges to test the strength of their love. In episode 20, the next turning point will be revealed, where Diep not only learns to read, but also learns to believe in her own worth. In the early morning at James's farm, the cold air of December still prevailed, with a thick fog draping over the lush vegetable beds that Diep tended daily. Each dewdrop clung to the leaves, sparkling like tiny gems in the faint dawn light. The temperature hovered around 41 dF, about 5 DC, and the chill seeped through her patchwork, worn-out jacket, making her cracked, trembling hands fumble as she tied the freshly harvested bunches of vegetables to take to the market. Her fingers, reddened by the cold, curled slightly each time they brushed against the coarse, frayed twine. Standing by the porch, with a worn, frayed bamboo basket in hand, a look of quiet reflection mixed with the lingering joy of last night's Christmas celebration flickered in her eyes when she and James had transformed into Santa Claus figures, delivering gifts to impoverished children. The radiant smiles of the kids lit up her heart, yet deep inside, a sense of inferiority crept in, much like the morning fog that obscured the sunrise. He has given me so much. Love, hope, a home. What can I possibly do to deserve all this? She thought, her heart warming at the memory of his gentle gaze and the deep timbre of his voice amid the innocent laughter of the village children, a soft melody in the midst of a frigid winter night. Hucky, the little loyal dog she had rescued from her former husband's home, scampered around her feet, tail wagging excitedly. His wet nose brushed against her hand as if to offer comfort. His shaggy coat, dusted with the morning dew, glistened under the first rays of sunlight. Smiling, she bent down to pat him and whispered tenderly in the cold air, "Hucky, I'm heading to the market today. You stay home and watch over things." As she fastened his collar, her numb, chilly fingers trembled against the rough, worn fabric. Then she let him run free in the yard. His little paws left playful traces on the damp earth, like innocent brushstrokes on the canvas of her life. Watching Hucky frolic among the vegetable beds eased some of the burdens of her past, a past that had weighed on her for years. Yet the image of James kept resurfacing in her thoughts, bringing with it both happiness and vague apprehension. "He can't read. I know nothing beyond growing vegetables. How can I ever be enough for him?" she wondered, gripping her basket tightly as memories of Pau's oppressive words and brutal punishments resurfaced. Pau, her ex-husband, had not only treated her like a slave, but had also forbidden her from learning, as if to lock her forever in ignorance. "What's the use of knowing how to read if you're stupid?" he would bellow, snatching the tattered book she'd scavenged from a pile of trash outside the market and shredding it into pieces before her eyes, before beating her every time she dared to ask about those mysterious letters printed on the packages. During the 5 years they lived together, she wasn't allowed to touch a single book. She was forced to work like a machine, cooking, cleaning, and tending the fields, while enduring arbitrary beatings whenever he was drunk, and the scornful insults from her mother-in-law, Mrs. May, which cut like a knife. "Useless. If you can't even bear children. Don't even think about being a woman." When she was thrown out of the house, she was left with nothing, not a penny, not a place to call her own. Only Hucky, who trailed behind her along the dusty road, her bare feet bleeding from the sharp pebbles and the bitter cold of night seeping into every breath. That lingering inferiority complex clung to her like a ghost, making her fear that she was unworthy of the love and hope James had offered, a man who had given her a new life. She tied the basket of vegetables onto her old bicycle, its worn-out seat chafing her aching hands, and pedaled toward the town market, her frail legs trembling on the rugged, dew-damp road. The cold wind swept through, slipping under her thin clothes, numbing her fingers and etching small cracks onto her reddened skin. Yet she paid no mind, her gaze fixed on the bumpy road ahead. "I must try harder, not just to be seen as useless or as someone who only receives help from him," she vowed, pedaling faster, with a burning determination akin to a tiny flame in the heart of winter, even as her breath escaped in wisps of white vapor. The bustling town market, alive with the festive spirit of Christmas, was adorned with glimmering tinsel hung over each stall. The chatter and laughter blended with the hum of passing vehicles, and the aroma of street food mingled with the damp air. Di parked her bike at her usual corner, where the muddied ground still bore the imprints of previous vendors, and set down her basket. She tentatively asked a nearby middle-aged woman, "Excuse me, "May I sell my vegetables here?" The woman, with a kind, weathered face, nodded warmly. "Of course, dear, go ahead." Diep arranged her bunches on an old cloth, and the fresh scent of the greens attracted a few curious onlookers. An elderly lady picked up a bundle, her eyes lighting up with delight. "How much for these lovely vegetables?" she asked. 10,000 dong a bundle," Diep replied softly, her gentle voice barely masking her shyness. The old lady selected 2 bundles, handed over the money and smiled. "Such fresh vegetables. You must take great care of them." Diep thanked her, her heart warmed by the simple compliment. But thoughts of James, who had opened a new world for her and inspired her to become a better version of herself, lingered in her mind. Elsewhere, James sat in his sleek CI office, having just ended a call with a business partner. The light streaming through the large window highlighted the polished wooden desk, cluttered with papers and business documents, and the only sound in the quiet room was the ticking of a wall clock. "Hello, Lynn, right?" he said into the phone, in his deep, soothing tone, tapping his fingers on the desk, as if lost in a pleasant thought. "I'm tied up today with personal matters. Reschedule all meetings for tomorrow, please." Lynn's clear, concise voice responded, "Yes, boss, you can count on me." James nodded as he hung up, his thoughts drifting to Diep, the image of her standing by his side in a Santa costume from the previous night vividly coming to mind. When he had played Santa with her to distribute gifts to the local children, he realized that she wasn't just the woman he loved, but also a quiet inspiration, a hidden strength unlike any he had ever seen. She was stronger than she realized. All she needed was a chance to shine, he thought to himself. Rising from his desk, the creak of his leather chair echoing softly, he strode down the long corridor. The steady sound of his shoes on the cold, tiled floor resonated as he hurried, his heart alight with the excitement of planning a surprise. On his way back to the farm, he stopped by a small, tucked-away bookstore in a narrow alley. The nostalgic scent of old paper wafted from shelves laden with dusty volumes. He picked up a simple children's book with bright, vivid illustrations titled Fairy Tales. Its cover depicting a small house bathed in moonlight, its yellow pages clear enough for a beginner. After paying the kindly old shop owner, who greeted him with a gentle smile, he cradled the book in his hands, his heart fluttering at the thought of teaching Diep how to read, imagining the mix of wonder and delight in her eyes when she read a word for the first time. Driving back to the farm, the soft hum of the engine merged with the crunch of the uneven dirt road, and the weak morning sun made the book beside him glow. Back at the farm, Diep had just returned from the market, her legs weary from the long morning, each step heavy on the dew-soaked ground. She entered the yard, setting the basket down by the wooden fence as her breath fogged in the chilly midday air, preparing to cook lunch for Haki. "Come here, I'm making you some food," she joked, untying Haki so that he could scamper about freely, his stubby tail wagging like a cheerful greeting. She stoked the small stove with dry twigs, the crackle of the fire and the aroma of burning wood bringing a comforting warmth to the otherwise cold wooden house. Just as she was absorbed in her chores, pouring rice into an old cast-iron pot and adding a few scraps of vegetables for Haki, she heard the familiar sound of an engine coming to a stop outside. The engine gradually fell silent, and in the quiet, James stepped through the door carrying a small brown paper bag, his voice brimming with excitement. "Diep, I'm back!" Surprised by his unusually early arrival, she looked up with wide eyes. "You're home early?" James chuckled heartily, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "I wanted to spend some time with you. Look what I brought." He opened the bag and pulled out the book, holding it up like a precious gift. "I'm going to teach you how to read. How do you feel about that?" Diep froze for a moment, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity, like a child encountering something both strange and captivating for the first time. "Read? But I can't read," she stammered. James stepped closer, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. The warmth of his touch seeped through her thin garment. "It's okay. I'll start from the very beginning. You're smart and I know you can learn." Diep lowered her gaze, her voice barely a whisper as she interlaced her fingers. "I'm so slow. Please don't laugh at me." Shaking his head with a kind smile, James reassured her. "I'm not laughing. It doesn't matter if you learn slowly. As long as you don't give up, we have all the time in the world." He proceeded to introduce each letter patiently, his tone as devoted as that of a caring teacher. "This is Mother. Try reading it." Diep stared at the unfamiliar characters, the curving lines resembling mysterious drawings, and with trembling voice managed, "Mem? Mother?" James clapped softly, the sound resonating in the quiet space. "Very good. See, you can do it. Diep lowered her head, tears glistening on her cheeks like dewdrops under the soft sunlight. Her voice choked with emotion as she recalled, "When I was little, I longed to learn, but Powell wouldn't let me. He told me I was stupid, beat me whenever I dared to ask about those strange letters, and locked me away in a corner so that I'd never dare to dream." James squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting a deep sadness, as if he truly understood her pain. "He was wrong. You aren't stupid. You were simply robbed of your opportunity by someone who didn't recognize your worth. Now, I'm giving you that chance, and I'll be here with you every step of the way." Lifting her eyes, Diep's voice trembled, yet shone with a newfound glimmer of hope. "Thank you. I'll do my best, so I won't disappoint you." James nodded, smiling warmly. "I know you can do it." They continued their lesson, each letter imprinting itself in Diep's mind like a doorway to a new world, each stroke of the pen marking the first steps along a path she had once been too afraid to tread. "This is house," James said, pointing to a simple word next to an illustration of a small home. Diep repeated it with a bit more confidence. "House." James laughed heartily, his eyes sparkling with pride. "Exactly! You're learning so quickly! I always knew you were smart." A small smile broke through on Diep's face, and a sense of pride began to bloom within her, like a seed just breaking through its shell in the spring sunlight. "I can learn. I am not useless," she thought, as memories of Powell's cruel beatings and the dark, isolated corners where he had confined her faded beneath the encouraging light of James's unwavering support. Later that afternoon, Lynn stopped by the farm with a small bag of leftover Christmas gifts, packets of lollipops and neatly wrapped cookies. "Hi, Diep, hi boss," she cheerfully greeted as she stepped into the wooden house, her business shoes clicking softly on the floor, bringing a hint of the city into the rustic setting. "Sister Lynn," Diep exclaimed, rising from her old wooden chair in surprise. Lynn smiled broadly. "I brought a few gifts, and it's always nice to see you." Glancing at the open book fairy tales on the scarred wooden table, Diep said shyly, "I'm learning to read, aren't I?" Diep nodded, her voice timid. "James is teaching me. I'm just starting, and I'm so slow, I'm afraid I won't keep up." Sitting beside her, Lynn's eyes shone with empathy as she shared, "It's okay to go slow, as long as you keep trying. I had to relearn everything when I was little too, letter by letter." Diep's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? You went through the same thing?" Lynn nodded, her voice soft and reassuring. "Yes, my childhood was hard. No one taught me, but I believed in myself, and now I work as a secretary for my boss." Smiling, Diep felt warmth and newfound camaraderie. "Thank you. I'll do my best for both you and James." Together they continued reading a few more lines from the book. Words like child and tree, accompanied by lively illustrations, filling the room with laughter and shared stories as the afternoon sun slowly faded outside. That evening, Diep and James sat by the small wood-burning stove inside the cozy house, the red glow from the flickering logs casting warm light on their faces, banishing the cold that had crept into the aged wooden walls. The book lay open on the table, its yellowed pages shimmering under the firelight. "Today you did so well," James said, his voice gentle like the full moon's glow. Diep bowed her head softly. "Thank you. I never imagined I could read, even if it's just a few words." James clasped her hand, his warmth melting away the chill of the evening. "You can achieve so much more. I'll teach you every day, step by step." Lifting her eyes, Diep's tears fell quietly, sparkling like morning dew. "You are the first person who's ever believed in me, the first who didn't see me as worthless. I will learn, so I won't let you down." James wiped away a tear with his thumb, his tone a promise. "You don't need to prove anything. I love you for who you are, strong, kind, and resilient." The memories of Pau, the echoing insults and brutal beatings in the darkness, still haunted her. Yet James's warm, steadfast gaze was like a beacon of light, banishing that long-held darkness. Diep smiled, her heart filled with hope for a new destiny. One where she was no longer the enslaved, ignorant girl, but a woman gradually discovering her own worth. Each word she read a brick in the foundation of her newfound freedom. Meanwhile, Lynn shared a secret with Diep as James worked on the farm to prepare for a major new project. James's father was increasing the pressure, setting new challenges for their love. Could Diep find the confidence to weather the coming storms? Episode 21 will reveal the answer.
Sớm hơn thường lệ, cô đứng bên khung cửa sổ, cũ kỹ. Nhìn ra khu vườn rau xanh mướt đầy, dần nảy mầm lòng chợt dần lên cảm giác bình yên hiếm hoi. Nhưng sự bình tĩnh ấy nhanh chóng bị xáo trộn khi cô nhìn thấy dáng người đàn ông với nụ cười ấm áp đã làm trái tim cô rung động. Cô nhận ra mình yêu anh, không phải từ hôm qua mà từ rất lâu, có lẽ từ khoảnh khắc đứng trước cô, bảo vệ cô khỏi sự tàn nhẫn của bao những ngày, khi cảm giác ngọt ngào ấy len lỏi trong vào lòng. Nỗi tự ti lại trỗi dậy như một con sóng dữ. Mình là ai mà dám yêu anh ấy, một người phụ nữ nghèo khổ từng bị chồng bỏ rơi, không cha không mẹ, mình không xứng đáng. Cô tự nhủ, đôi mắt mờ đi vì những giọt nước mắt kìm nén. Diệp bước chân ra, đôi tay gầy guộc ôm lấy mình để xua đi cái lạnh của cơn gió sớm. Cô cúi xuống nhìn Haki, chú chó đang vẫy đuôi bên chân cô, và mỉm cười yếu ớt. Haki, bạn đã đói chưa? Cô hỏi với giọng dịu nhẹ nhàng như nói với một người bạn thân thiết.